The defeat of the Boxer Revolution, Xinhai Revolution, and the reform and reparation imposed on the Qing dynasty weakens the Chinese empire. But there's still hope. In 1905, a man by the name of Sun Yat-sen, his Chinese name is Sun Zhongshan, a young doctor in exile in Japan, he started an alliance called Zhongwanghui, and some might call it a secret society. And his aim was to overthrow the Chinese empire and to start a republic. And 3 years later, the Chinese empress passed away. And 3 more years, a revolution started, Xinhai Revolution, Xinhai Geming. And in 1912, Sun Yat-sen, with the help of the defected Beiyang army, Beiyang Jun, they overthrew Qing dynasty and proclaimed the first republic of China, Zhonghua Mingguo. He was a provisional president, but he had to step aside and let Yuan Shikai, who was the head of the Beiyang army, to lead. Yuan Shikai passed away in 1916. Sun Yat-sen came back. He appointed his first lieutenant, Chiang Kai-shek, Jiang Yishi. And 3 years later, in 1919, at the Treaty of Versailles, after the World War I, the Allies, they gave Shandong, which is a Chinese territory, to Japan instead of giving it back to China, despite China helped the Allies during the war. And this sparked like a lot of anger. And millions of Chinese people took to the street, among them a few students and a few intellectuals, like Chen Duxiu, Li Dazhao, and Mao Zedong. And 2 years later, in 1921, to be precise, is on July 23, 1921, in Shanghai, these young people held their first meeting and they founded the CPC, the Chinese Communist Party. And there were only 13 of them at that time: Li Dazhao, Chen Duxiu, and Mao Zedong, and 10 other attendees. And 2 years later, they started working with the Nationalist Party, and both of them are backed by Soviet Russia. They formed the first united front to fight Japan. Sadly, in 1925, Sun Yat-sen passed away, and naturally his lieutenant took the lead. And Chiang Kai-shek, seeing the influence of the Communist Party in the Chinese people, he started purging the communists. So in 1927 in Shanghai, they killed thousands of communist members and they arrested others. On September 18, 1931, what Chinese call 9/18事变, which is 18 September incident, when the Japanese troops did a false flag, they blew up a section of the railway and used it as a pretext to seize Manchuria. For those who don't know, Manchuria is what Chinese call Dongbei, Heilongjiang, Liaoning, and Jilin, those parts. So later on it even became Manchuria. So the Japanese started attacking, and you need to remember that since that time, 1931, the war never stopped till 1945, after the World War II. But despite all that, Chiang Kai-shek always took the Communist Party as the real threat, while Mao Zedong think the Japanese are the real threat. And in 1934, the Nationalist Party almost wiped out the communists and they had to flee. So they started what's known today as the Long March. So they started leaving that territory and walking for miles for 13 months to go to Shanxi, Yan'an. And while going there, it's like 1,000 couldn't make it. And when they arrived, Mao Zedong became the undisputed leader of the communists. And in 1936, the Xi'an incident happened, what Chinese call Xi'an 事变, when Chiang Kai-shek's generals, they kidnapped him and forced him to accept to work together with the CPC, Chinese Communist Party. So he accepted, and they created the Second United Front to fight the Japanese. That was in 12 December 1936. And in 1937, in Qi 事变, July 7th, the Japanese started a full-scale war against China. Chinese call it 抗日战争. Kang is decang, which is to resist. 日 is Riben, which is Japan, and 战争 is war. So it's the war of resistance against Japanese empire. So they invaded Beijing, which fell in few days, and then kept on going, and then they seized Tianjin and went on to Shanghai. Shanghai resisted over 3 months, but finally they seized it. And you need to know that Japan was so powerful. They even dispatched over 3,000 aircrafts, while Chinese are barely having 200 aircrafts. So they seized Shanghai and moved on to Nanjing. Nanjing, which was the capital of Ming dynasty, and then from 1927 till 1937, Chiang Kai-shek had to retreat and moved his capital to Wuhan. So they started the fight in Nanjing, and later on what happened is the atrocities of Nanjing that we know. Nanjing Datusha, which is the Nanjing Massacre, where Japanese massacred hundreds of thousands of civilians, women, children, and they raped, tortured, and executed those people. And the fight kept going on. The CCP and the nationalists worked together using guerrilla tactics and fighting the Japanese. And Japan didn't stop till the United States used atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that's where Japan surrendered and retreated. But sadly for China, the war didn't stop there. The civil war resumed. So the nationalists and the communists, they started fighting again from 1945 till 1949.